Hi, today we're going to be talking about how to multiply and divide rational functions. So here are the steps on how to solve these kind of equations. You want to first factor the numerator and denominator completely. This may involve first finding the GCF, or greatest common factor. Next, you want to write the factored form into one big fraction in order to simplify it. Next, you want to simplify the rational expression, and this may involve crossing out like terms and writing the fraction in the most simplest form possible. So next here are just some practice problems for multiplying and dividing rational functions. Okay, for the first problem, we have x squared over x squared minus 4 times x squared minus 5x plus 6 over x squared minus 3x. So we need to first make sure we factor everything completely or find the GCF. And so for the x squared term, we can't factor that anymore, but the x squared minus 4 term, we can factor that. So we have x squared over x minus 2x plus 2, which would equal x squared minus 4. And then that's multiplied by x minus 2x minus 3. And that is x squared minus 5x plus 6 factored completely. And for the bottom one, we just need to find a GCF, which would be x. So put x out front. So we get, in the parentheses, we get x minus 3. Okay, now, we can basically combine these two terms, or these two fractions, and basically just cross off what we can, the like terms. So I can see the x minus 2 terms are the same, so we can cross those off. And we have an x minus 3, which is the same. So we can cross those off. So we're left with x squared. I'm just going to put the x out front here. Times x plus 2. So since we have this x term at the bottom and an x squared term on the top, I can cancel out one x from this and then cancel out this x completely. So we're left with x over x plus 2. And that is the answer. Okay, for the second problem, we have x squared minus 8x plus 12 over x squared minus 16 times 4x plus 16 over x squared minus 4x plus 4. So first, again, we need to make sure we factor everything completely or find the GCF. So this x squared minus 8x plus 12 term, we can factor it by x plus, or x minus 2, or minus 6, x minus 2 over x minus 4 and x plus 4, which would be x squared minus 16 factored. And that is multiplied by, it looks like we can find a GCF of the 4x plus 16, and that would be 4, so we put the 4 out front, and we're left with x plus 4 over x minus 2, x minus 2, which would be x squared minus 4x plus 4 factored. So now we just can combine these these two fractions and just cross the similar terms off. So I can see we have the x plus 4s are the same, so we can cross those off. And I can see we can cross off the x minus 2. We can only cross off one, and we do have a second one. And so that means we're left with x minus 6. There's a 4, so we put that in front. And x minus 4 times x minus 2. And I don't think we can cross off anything else, so that's the answer. Okay, from the final problem, we're going to do a division problem just to switch it up a little bit. We have x plus 4 over 2x minus 6 divided by 3x plus 12 over 4x minus 12. We don't need to freak out that it's a division problem. All we have to do is multiply the reciprocal of this term or of this fraction, by this one. So it would look like x plus 4 over 2x minus 6 times 4x minus 12 over 3x plus 12. All we did was just switch the position of the numerator and the denominator. So now we just do the exact same steps as we did on the first two problems. So we factor everything completely. So it looks like this x plus 4 is factored, but we need to find the GCF of the 2x minus 6 term, which would be 2. So we have x plus 4. I'll put the 2 out front since it's the GCF. And then x minus 3 times our GCF, so which would be 4. So we put the 4 out front. 4 times x minus 3. And over 3x minus, or x plus 4, because the 3 is the GCF. So next we basically just need to cross out like terms. So I see the x minus 3 on the top and bottom that can be crossed out, and the x plus 4 terms. So we're left with 4 over 2 times 3. And that would simplify to 4 over 6, which would simplify to 2/3. And that is the final answer. Next, here are just some final tips on how to solve multiplication and division of rational functions a little bit easier. First, you always want to factor everything first. That's a common mistake. People just try to look at a multiplication or division problem and just try to divide across without first factoring. Next, you always want to look for a GCF before factoring. That's also another common mistake. It's important to always look for the greatest common factor before trying to factor anything. And finally, you got to make sure you always cross out like terms. And here are just some final tips on how to be a better student in algebra. You always want to use your resources, look up tutorial videos online, go into tutoring, or just ask a fellow peer for help. And so, this has been multiplying and dividing rational functions. Thanks.